going to actually share my story, or part of my story, my life. I really thought about this for a long time, and I thought to myself, you know, what is orality? And how can I explain what orality is? And as I thought, you know what? I'm going to share my story, how I journeyed into orality. And so it's not going to be very academic, it's going to be my experience. And I'd like to take you back to when I was a little kid. And Gideon, you can look for this clip so long. You know, when, I think each one of you, when you were a little kid, I think you can remember being told to sit down and look at a book from small. Being told, shh, be quiet, here's a pen and paper, and you scribbled. I think each one of us had that happen to us. And so I was born into a world where words were represented by squiggles on paper. And my whole life was formed and was expressed and was determined by these squiggles on paper. And I'd like you to have a look at this clip. Sorry, when I pulled it out of the baby's video, DVD, I didn't get the sound, and I am not a techno person, so you'll just have to guess. Gideon, why don't you start again? Okay, well, basically what happened here, the mother tried to have the child read the book, and the child said no, and the mother tried to force it, and then the child hit the mother.
Mercy.
Not much.
And now, have a look. That's, I think, our experience. You know, we grow up surrounded by books. And as we learn and as we grow up, we learn to make squiggles on paper, and we learn to squiggle on paper, and you don't squiggle on the wall or the floor or the table or the chair. You know, you get taught where to put your squiggles. And as you get a bit older, you'll learn to draw pictures to reflect the world you see on this paper. And then as you get a bit older, you go to school and you start learning to make a squiggle that everybody can understand. And the squiggle becomes a word. And the words become sentences. And soon you are taught to express yourself on paper. And that your whole schooling that's all it's about. Is taking information off a page, digesting it, and then regurgitating it and squiggling on paper. And giving it to the next person to read and digest, and then come back and mark it and squiggle on it. And I know that sounds really like squiggles on paper, but really, truly, that was my world. My world was negotiated by squiggles on paper. And you know, just like that picture, which we didn't pause it soon enough, you know, that little kid had all these books, you know. So when she wanted to retreat into a safe place, where did she go? To her books. Even if she's not looking at books, you know, books are what's familiar. Writing is what was familiar. Reading was familiar. Expressing yourself was through writing. And for me, I learned to express myself in writing. You know, if something was bothering me, I was told, go write it, go journal, go try to understand yourself by writing it and looking at it and seeing yourself. And so my identity was really negotiated by my relationship with the word on the page. And so, yeah, finish university, and off we go to a new world. And this new world was totally different. And when I got there for that first year, I tell you, I didn't know who I was anymore. I had this And I don't even think I can call it culture shock. It was more than culture shock. It was a deep, deep unsettling. I didn't know how to be myself. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to relate to people, how to relate to the world around me. I didn't know how to communicate. And have a look at this, how these children are raised. Okay, yeah, you can't hear, but this child's doing the sound, and then it's helping the other child do the correct sound and do it correctly. This one, the mother's telling the word, and the child's trying to repeat it, but the child's not getting the correct like rhythm to the word, and then the mother's redoing the word. That child grew up with no paper, no books, no pens. It grew up in a community with lots of other children, lots of people. It was never ever alone. From very young, it had to explore the world to learn anything. Where the other child and me, I explored my world through a book. You know, what does a cow say? Moo, you know, and you look at the pictures. That kid gets out there and they're the animals. I mean, and you can see, like, the parent didn't say, stop bothering with the dog, you know, you're going to get dirty, you'll catch germs and all the rest. The child's allowed to just explore the world. From the minute it can move, it's exploring. And talking. You know, it's coached all the time by its little children coach it, others coach it, help it to learn how to use words, to use rhyme, to use rhythm, to actually use their body to communicate. And what the child is learning there is a form of communication called onjongo. It's like you'd call it a dance, but it's actually where you giving an experience that you had, and the people are reaffirming you, and it's like a game that they do to communicate things. But these people communicated totally different from me. And that's why I had such a terrible identity crisis. Because suddenly, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to let them know who I was, because the way they related to my world, they couldn't. And could I relate to their world? No. And so I started on a journey, and I'd like to just read something I journaled when I was trying to think about my journey, a little while ago. And I wrote here, okay, I entered the world of orality. This world used words to create pictures, to connect people. A world where words, silence, and just being were treasured. A world where paper was unknown. The static world, a squiggle on paper, preserved for others to consume, was foreign. A word was debated and crafted to create theories to be recorded as a memento to my thoughts was irrelevant. As I stepped into this world, I struggled to find myself. Who was I? And how did I fit into this world of being? Suddenly, my being, so connected to the information I had, was challenged. I had to learn to forge a new identity based on the relationships forged through just being with others. Sometimes talking, sometimes silent, but most times listening. I had to learn to paint pictures with words, to artistically use them to convey feelings and emotions, to bind and connect me to others. I had to learn the power of the dynamic word, which when spoken was lost, yet in its death released a power far greater and lasting than any word on paper. I had to learn that knowledge was rooted in connectedness to a community. That wisdom was a prize to be gained through experience, personally, and through the shared experience of others. I had to learn that knowledge was not information, facts and figures devoid of application. Rather, knowledge was wisdom, that elusive something, an intangible ability to understand the world around you and provide answers for life's most pressing questions. And so my journey into the world of orality. And really, that is a journey each one of us actually needs to take. Because, you know, it's actually our connectedness that gives us our identity. Really, truly, if you think about it. Because who are you if you don't have a past, and you don't have people around you, and you don't have a place to be right now? And so as I lived in a poor, I was there for a number of years. I had to really learn, what is my place in the world today? And my relationship with words, I believe, helped me understand my place. Because suddenly my place wasn't to get knowledge, my place was to connect to people. And to me, that was a profound thought. Not only that, it was freedom. Because suddenly I was free from being something, from trying to, you know, get all this knowledge and become something and do something and perform. People didn't worry about how I performed. People were worried about who I was. And you know, as we struggled to learn how to share the gospel, we had to learn that sharing the gospel isn't a fact of, you know, a set of facts. It's a relationship to a person, Jesus. And so my husband's trying to pull up a clip, and I think you can plug the sound in probably now. So we finally created this little clip, and it'll show you one way that they communicate, and it's a clip. It's the story of Noah, and doesn't look like we're gonna get the sound. Oh, there you go. Okay, imagine if that's how class was. Wouldn't it be fun? That is the guys sharing and learning the story of Noah. Okay? But the way they do it is in community. Nobody owns the knowledge. Nobody's the expert. We're all together. And you saw this guy is actually the expert, you can say. So he was telling the story. But this guy decided he wanted to share in the story. And so he came in and shared. And it's okay. So basically that's how, there's lots of different forms of sharing. This is just one of them. But it's always done in community, in a collective sharing and a collective knowing. And yes, there are people that know more than others and are respected for that, but it's not something that puts you higher than the other person. It just helps you to enrich your community. And if you think about that little kid, there's a clip that I didn't get. The small little kid was learning to carry the bucket on her head. I mean, the child wasn't even a year, just starting to walk, and they're already having her learn. But the other little kids are helping her, and that's how they learn. It's in community. Celebrating the successes of those that succeed, and just embracing and helping those that are not succeeding to be able to succeed. And so, I left this world and I arrived here at the beginning of the year.
How many years ago was that? 16?
This.
When you first arrived?
Yeah, we stayed there for 16 years. So we were in this area for 16 years. And so the beginning of this year, I arrived in the States. Well, actually, it was June. Yeah, January we were in South Africa, but it's the same Western city. We arrived in the States. And this is what I wrote. Rather abruptly and suddenly, I was again thrust into an unknown world. A world that was so different from my previous realities. Words don't form a cocoon, nor do they create connectedness. And I saw the books as really a cocoon I could retreat into. So when I first got to Apua, what I did is I created my little space with lots of books, and when I couldn't cope with life, I would go and hide in my space with my books. And so that's what I'm referring to here. So words don't form a cocoon, nor do they create connectedness. It would seem like words are dying. They are encrypted, rushed, constantly used, but hurriedly uttered and measured against the ticking clock. The silence has been drowned by words in the media, manipulative, aggressive, and demanding. And so I struggle to understand and form a new identity and relationship with words, to enter a foreign orality based on text, yet devoid of information, rooted in social connectedness, yet isolating in its impersonal, superficial frivolousness and lack of community as I understand community. An orality negotiated and sustained by technology. And that is where I am today, trying to understand a new reality, a new orality, a orality where people send you a text, but they don't use words, they use abbreviations that I haven't learned what they are yet. That they write things on Facebook, but what do they say? I had toast for breakfast, I'm going to the mall. They don't really share the deep, deep thoughts that are inside of them. And so I can have 1,000 friends on Facebook or whatever the new social things are these days. But do I really have one person that I've connected with on a deep level that when I'm hurting, I can go to that person and say, you know what, I'm hurting and I just need to be with someone. And that to me is the scary part of this new orality, which was as scary as entering the first orality, because it's unknown to me. And as I look at this new orality that I'm seeing here, because you guys don't negotiate world with a squiggle on a paper. You negotiate world with a piece of technology, a piece of a machine between your fingers. And my question to you is, what does that mean to you? And what is that going to mean to you as you continue through life? And really, that's all I can say about second orality, is that I don't understand it. And I'm wondering if you guys understand it. You can use it, but do you understand what it's doing to you and to those around you? And so that's just the question I want to leave today, with each of you to go home and ponder about. and think about. And you know what? I don't believe we should say, let's run away from this new technology or this new orality that I'm experiencing. I believe I need to embrace it as well. But I need to know how I'm embracing it so I don't lose the connectedness with others that I need. And that each one of us actually needs. And so that our new identity that I'm going to have to form is not going to lose elements that are so important that I've learned with primary orality. And so, Dr. Stan, that was my story. That has been my experience, and that's what I wanted to share.
It's a very rich story, isn't it? Let's give her a hand. All right, there's so much more. You can't be off the hook. Let's have some lights here. All right, we want to hear this language, don't we? This different language. You want to hear it?
Yep.
Yes? Okay, so you had to go there, you had to learn the language, didn't you? Did you learn how to tell stories like that?
No. I wish I could say I did, but I learned that I am still very much a child when it comes to being able to do that. I can be the one going, choo, choo, and doing the clapping, but I'm not really good with painting pictures with words.
All right. So we want to hear painting pictures with words. Interesting. So let's hear the language. Can you speak to Gideon?
Well, I can greet you all. Moro wapinduka. Koreve.
So this sounds like it's what's the origin of this language?
It's a Bantu language.
A Bantu language. Okay.
It's an old language. It's got like 8 different cases. You know, like some languages have like male, female, neutral. Well, they've got 8 cases, and each case will change maybe 5 times depending on tense and the use of the word.
So it's not a simple language, is it?
No,
Aren't you
it's not
glad
a
you
simple
speak
language.
English or American or whatever you speak, okay? All right, so it's a complicated language, all right? So you had to learn the language.
Yeah.
All right, so that helped you to get into the community.
Yeah.
How many years did it take you to learn that language?
Well, I think I'm still learning. But when we first went, we were just based in a pool, and then we actually got given the job of district pastor. So we had 6 languages. So we kind of like stopped learning. And when we came back, we tried to learn, and Gideon's better than me. I can get around, and I won't get lost, and I won't go hungry, and I'll have a place to sleep always, and I can chit-chat, but I can't really do anything deep. And I think that would probably take a while for me. I'm not very good with languages, as you probably remember. I could never spell. I can't even do English grammar stuff. Yeah. I'm not a linguist.
All right, so it's learning a language to be connected to people. All right.
But it's learning more than the language.
That's what
and
you want,
that's
yeah.
really what it is. It's actually learning how to be able to go to them. And it's just the way they do things is so different. Like when you go to visit someone, when you arrive at their place, you don't immediately start talking. No, you know, they live outside. So you go and sit outside with them, and you'll just put yourself down and you'll sit. And there's silence. And then they'll say finally like, oh, how are you? Moro, kore. And then you'll answer, and they'll say, so what's your news? And you know, if I knew how to do the language, I would actually give them my news from the village I've come from in like a song form almost. It's a special genre that's used to share the news from somewhere else. And it takes time. And you'll sit there and you'll tell the news from where you come from, and you'll connect like that. And you'll probably then have them tell their news, and it'll take time. And then finally you can actually do your business. And you know, I would go for a meeting, like I was helping one farmers association, and like the meeting's going to be at say 9 o'clock, and I'd get there and there's nobody for 4 hours, there's nobody, because tasks aren't important as people, and someone had a crisis and they were willing to help that person. So, you know, it's not just the language, you have to learn a new way of doing life, and that people are more important than time and tasks.
So the people are nomadic.
They are nomadic.
So their community becomes that much more critical because they all have to stick together.
They do, and they stick together, and yet they are not together. They're in little groups of 2 or 3 for a lot of their time, but they somehow have a very deep sense of belonging. And I think it's because of the growing up with the community and the bonding that takes place. And they always know that wherever they go, they will be given a bed, well, I mean, just a spot on the floor in the hut, but, and food and water. And they will always be cared for because they belong.
All right, I've got many more questions. Do you have questions that you'd like to ask? Emmanuel?
How do you spell orality?
If you put it into your computer, it'll say it should be morality. So it's morality without the M.
Okay.
It isn't yet in the spell check on my computer.
What was the language called?
Archiherero.
You can spell that one.
As you said, Archiherero.
You may have explained it and I missed it, but what was your motive for going in the first place?
We're actually missionaries. So we went to plant a church.
Well, that segues into all the other questions that I have. All right, so you have a job to do and you go there and you find out, whoopsie, don't even know how to negotiate with these people. So what was the process? And maybe Gideon, you come and tell us because you're the pastor. You're the person that has to do this job.
Yeah, the first thing, as Pam said, actually I learned something this morning. I was watching the Q Ideas. I don't know if you know Q Ideas. It's like a Christian TED talk. And on this, the guy was saying, we have to live love. And he had an abbreviation. Love, L is for learning, O is for observing, V is for validating, and E is for engaging. And that's basically what we try to do without knowing love. We had to learn to be with them. That was important. So I had to learn to sit. Sorry, may I use your bottle? This is a bottle for us, right? A bottle of water. When it's empty, for them, they turn it upside down, hopefully it's closed, and they sit on it. It becomes a seat. So I had to learn to sit on all kinds of objects. Thank you. And so many other things that we had to learn and obviously observe. As Pam said, when you come, you have to, in our society, everybody greets everybody, right? When you first come into a place. Well, with them, if you're not the eldest, you sit and you wait to be greeted. And so when we got to any place, you sit down and you just wait until you are talked to. And once you are talked to, then you can start talking. So many different things like that, learning, observing, and then when it came to us doing what we're doing, we had to validate their culture. That was very important. So at the end of my first year of ministry, I realized that I was teaching these people, and it was like water on a duck's back. And so that first December, we went down to Cape Town, and I spent my vacation time in the library learning about who these people really are. And so the second, third year, whenever I went out, I'd ask them questions about what I was reading, and obviously some of them were good, and some of them, some anthropologists make up their own ideas. And so I had to validate what I was learning about who they are, and in that way, learn about their culture and help them see that I'm interested in them as a people, as opposed to just coming and dumping something like country. And then obviously engaging that we did. As you saw, they're cattle people. Did we show a picture of cattle? They're cattle people, and so they don't deal in dimes and dollars and cents. They deal in cattle. And so that's why they're semi-nomadic. They take their animals around from place to place for water and grazing and so forth. And so that became, I got paid to be a herd boy. That's what so that's what I did often. Go out and herd the animals, learn to be in that community and live like them. And yeah, and that's why it took 16 years.
I think something else that's really important in the process is that we had to understand how they communicate important information, because it's easy to just think, well, I'll just tell them. But we realized that if we don't use the right genre, or we don't use the right person as this person presenting the information, they won't take it as important and they won't listen to it. And so it wasn't easy because they didn't want to share those secrets. You had to become totally accepted and trusted before they were willing to share the deeper, important, things in their culture. And they used to, I actually found it really interesting, anthropologists would come and stay with them and that, and then they would have, once you can get to know the language, you really get a glimpse into people that you don't know, you wouldn't have. Like, they would laugh about how these silly anthropologists believe their lies, They really used to have a lot of fun doing that, seeing how much they could mislead the anthropologists before the anthropologists realized what was happening. And so it made me doubt academics a little bit, but anyway. But but that's what they did to us in the beginning as well. And it's only as we got their trust that they really opened to us and they realized that we are serious. And we actually left for 2 years and came back because we joined Adventist Frontier Missions. We left because of certain loss. There's a whole long story, and the money ran out, so we had fun and we were financing ourselves. And when we came back, it was a totally different thing. They trusted us. They were like, wow, you really do care about us. You're coming back. Nobody comes back. And so that's really important, is to have that trust and that relationship.
Yeah, and when it comes to communication, we use traditional methods. We came with our Bibles, we came with the felt sets. It was kindly donated by many different people. I think we had like 4 sets. And so we use all these methods of communication that we were familiar with. And in 1998, I even started literacy classes for our Himba friends. And in my 2nd or 3rd month, an old lady sat in the class, and I gave them a pen, pencil, and a book to write the notes. And this particular day, she kept interrupting my class, and she kept saying to me, "What is this letter?" She was so familiar with hearing her name that she thought it a prize to be able to see her name with her own eyes. And after about the 3rd time that she interrupted me, I got a bit impatient with her. But in my impatience, I turned to God and I said, do you really expect these people to know you by reading? How will they ever read from Genesis to Revelation if she can't even read her name? And it's at that point when we realized that literacy was not the way to go. That was the turning in our experience, 1998, April. And I asked God and I said, there's no ways you can expect people to know you through a book.
Got a question?
So what's been the impact of the 16 years that you've been there? What has changed? Have you built churches? Did you baptize them? Did they change you? Did you change them? What's the legacy?
Jesus says something very powerful. He says, as the Father has sent me, I'm sending you. And for the first 2-3 years, we felt that it was all about us and what we could contribute to this community. But in reality, missions is not about what we can do for others. Missions is about God working in me and transforming me, because there's no ways that I would understand God by living in Cape Town for the rest of my life. I saw a totally new God when I served these people. A God who is really prepared to come down, not only to me, but even to the Himba. So the legacy is not what we left behind, but their footprints in our hearts that has transformed and changed who we are and who we believe God to truly be.
And our footprints in their hearts that show God. Actually, God footprints in their hearts, you can say. And those of you that have been going to Sabbath school, we're 13th Sabbath Mission Project, so there is work being done. But we actually resisted we don't believe in changing people to become another little Western institution. They are who they are. They rejected Christianity because people wanted them to become Western. They wanted to take them out of their world and put them into our world, into our box, into our way we do things. And people don't like that. You don't like that. Nobody likes that. And so we try not to do that. We try to let them be who they are. And I think that's the most powerful witness. If I can be who I am and allow God to redeem my culture, my character, my personality, my way of approaching life, so that I can stay in my community and I can impact my community for good. And so that's the legacy we hope we have left behind.
Interesting. You referred to the 13th Sabbath offering from last quarter. There was money that was going to go for MP3s, because that's how they learn.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole lot of story that you haven't told, but these people are experts in this field of orality. They have lectured all over. They know for the way in which they've learned to work. But just tell the story about the old man sitting and God stops talking because you tell them why God stops talking to him. Remember that one?
Okay, so Gideon, when we were testing, because you've got to test your material, so we were testing our material and we had like a tape player, and Gideon had to go to a wedding, and they had the guy that was in charge of the cooking the meat and that, so Gideon gave the old man the tape player, and he was like, because he respected Gideon, he took it, and Gideon said, "Oh, listen to this," and he was like, "Okay," and then Gideon started playing it, and he's like, "Oh wow, this is for me." And he sat and he listened to that tape the whole night, around almost like towards midnight. He sent a message for Gideon to come, and he said to Gideon, "This thing has stopped talking to me. God is not talking to me anymore. I want to hear what God is telling me." And Gideon's like, "Okay, well, Father, the batteries are dead." He's like, "Oh, well, go get me more batteries." And it's like, he didn't care that we were like 2 hours out in the bush, there wasn't a battery inside. He was like, "I want to hear God speak to me." And the reason why God was speaking to him was he was using their genre, this dancing, this kind of music. I mean, whatever you want to say, the way they speak, he could relate to it.
So what was their original religion like? Did they have many gods, or how did they?
They believe in God that created them, but that their ancestor is the mediator between them and God. They have ancestral veneration. And so the whole idea of Jesus is like, well, Jesus is your ancestor, the white man's ancestor, or the Western's ancestor, and our ancestor fulfills Jesus' role. And they're actually very spiritual people.
All right, well, I think that, go ahead, yes, please.
What about the food? What kind of things do they eat over there?
Well, it's a desert.
Yeah.
And so their staple is like yogurt. And then during the summer, the rainy time, they will grow corn, like Indian corn, you know, the hard white corn, or the colorful ones, and they'll store that and grind it sometimes into porridge, and then obviously they'll have meat, but they don't slaughter the animals that often because milk is, you know, their staple. So if you kill it for your animals to eat, you won't have any milk. So, but it's really milk and then just wild berries and stuff.
All right, time is running out, and I know some people haven't had a chance to go past the food here, and so I just want to give the Petersons a big hand.